listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS students. In this episode, we are going to focus entirely on Academic Writing Task 1. We're going to look at the language you need. We're going to look at some of the exam skills you need. Then we'll go back and we'll focus on some very specific language points, some very specific grammar points. And then after that, we'll go back to exam skills. Okay, so it's a bit of a sandwich, a multi-level sandwich, double-decker sandwich. But basically what I want to do is just give you an overall view and look at this from various angles, as in what the examiner's looking for, what you need to prepare, and what you need to prepare for, both covering exam skills and language skills. Okay, so let's start with the essential language you will need. Of course, we are going to need comparison language. I did a full podcast about this a while back, where we look at all the different types of conjunctions, and it's essential that you learn these, and we can use this with whereas, we can use although, whereas, while. These are essential, and I strongly recommend you learn these and you learn them inside out, because they're also useful for your task 2, because it shows the examiner you've got the ability to show a wide grammatical range, okay, which is one of the criteria. Now, moving on specifically to task 2, we need trend, change language. This is probably over commented on in the IELTS community, because all the IELTS Task 1 essays that I correct, they've always got this obsession with the language of change. And this is only appropriate where there is, on the x-axis or on any of the axes, it's like a process over time, okay? So if there's no changing time on the graph, forget this. You probably want to forget this language. Don't try and incorporate it. For example, when you're trying to describe a pie chart, forget it and use your pie chart vocabulary, which is probably words like fraction, segment, percentage, and then going into more. If you've got more ability, you could say a half, a fifth, a sixth, a tenth. All these very specific pie chart, language. Anyway, likewise, process language, okay? So this is basically when we're describing a sequence. So here we need words like first, then, next, secondly, followed by, preceded by, penultimately, the penultimate stage. Once again, quite specific for describing flowcharts, processes, industrial processes. And personally, I think this is relatively simple to learn, and yeah, you could probably learn it in a one study session, I imagine. It just, and if you really want to just get to grips with it, you could just copy out pen and paper a sample essay description already, and then just go through and circle the words I was mentioning before. Now, very important one that we can also use for task 2, which we should definitely use for task 2 actually, is topic-specific language. Very briefly, if you are writing an essay, a report describing environmental processes, then it's good to use, not good, it's essential, if you want to score a band 7 or above, it's essential to use topic-specific vocabulary. So the chart is about environmental issues. In this case, we're going to use words like CO2 emissions, pollution. If we want to get more specific, we'll say air pollution, noise pollution, traffic pollution, congestion, contamination, toxic pollution, nuclear waste, toxic waste. This is specific vocabulary you would only use in that topic, okay? Now, to give you a bad example, just to illustrate and highlight, you could say the air is very bad, okay? That's super basic, and it's like band 5 score. Whereas the more advanced, sophisticated writer would say the air pollution is severe, okay, or the air pollution in numerous Asian cities is severe. Perhaps even the higher level writer would put something like, due to the level of toxic contaminants of air particles in the air, lung disorders are at an all-time high in certain Asian cities. Okay, just as an example, using more structures and more specific vocabulary. Right, going back to academic task 1. Task response. Now, once again, I will take the liberty of describing what you should not do. You should not describe every single data point on that graph, because this is listing, and here it's very clear that the writer is probably a little bit lost and doesn't know how to give an overview, doesn't know how to give like a summary, okay? So in short, when you are identifying the trends, grouping is essential, listing is abysmal, all right? If you can remember that, then you're onto a good track. So let me expand. When we're grouping, we're just looking for similarities, which we can put them all into the same category. So for pie charts, we could say something like, I don't know, Russia, France, and Germany all had 20% each, okay? That's a million times better than saying Germany has 20%, France has 20%, and Russia also has 20%. That was just horrible, okay? We just say France, Germany, and Russia all have a similar amount, 20% each, okay? Once again, grouping is essential, listing is abysmal. So the next time you do your task 1, just check it and make sure that you haven't gone through and listed every single data point, okay? That's a crime. Right then. Also, if you did list every single data point, you would probably be penalized for task response because you haven't fulfilled the task, which is to give an overview. Let me give you some pointers for giving an overview for your task 1. First of all, the trend. If we've got a line graph, or we've got the chronology, the time chronology, then a trend, is it going upwards, is it going downwards? What's the main change? Okay, what's happened? What's happening? What's the most obvious thing? Dominic Cole, who was on the show a while back, he suggested like almost squinting your eyes and just ignoring the specific data, blurring your eyes, ignoring the specific points, and just getting an overview. So it kind of just like makes blurry all the specific figures, so you can basically clearly see which is the biggest section, what's the overall trend, what the general idea is in the graph. Okay? So yeah, that's a very good technique, and I sometimes use it myself if I just see too many figures and too many data points. I'm like, okay, I'll blur my eyes and just get the main change over the period of time. Okay? Now, when we are describing the main changes or like the overall idea, we are probably going to need the superlative. Okay? And for writing your task 1, a superlative is one of these grammar points that you need to master. And I'm not exaggerating when I say you need to master it. You need to be completely comfortable with it, because just by identifying the biggest and the smallest, or the largest and the smallest, the maximums, that's the ones, the maximums and the minimums, just by identifying them, you are on the right track to giving an overall idea of the graph, which is needed for task response. So master the superlatives. I'll just give you a very, very brief recap now, with some tips along the way. The first tip is avoid good and bad, big and small. Okay, this is very, very basic vocabulary. Try to use words, instead of saying the biggest portion of the pie chart is Germany, say the largest portion, or the most significant fraction of the pie chart. Okay, this kind of vocabulary. And also, if you can mention the largest in a few different ways, yeah, so you could say the largest fraction of the pie chart overall belongs to Germany, whereas for the Asian countries, the most significant section, the most significant portion pertains to China. Okay, something like that. And there I gave you sort of like two examples of saying the maximum, but obviously depending on each group. Right, so I'll give you some more examples. The most fluctuations can be seen in the year 1998, ranging from a low of 20 to a high of 100. Okay, there I'm given like the range of the fluctuations. And okay, yeah, and the most fluctuations can be seen in the year 1998. Another good way to use your superlatives is to compare them. So we could say, although the overseas section is the largest, the smallest section belongs to the domestic sector at just 11%. Okay. As a side note, approximations are also a good way to introduce more variety in your language. Okay, to boost your language grammatical range score. Approximations, by approximations I mean we can say at just 11%, slightly over 20%, around 40%. Okay, we can also do this for fractions, obviously. So we say around half of all consumption. Germany was responsible for around half of all consumption. Nearly 20% of all car sales came from Scotland. Okay, just rough approximations help you to introduce variety, help you to score for grammatical range and accuracy. Obviously accuracy if you're getting it right. This is one reason why I emphasize master. Don't just learn it, master the superlatives. Now, as a side note, you must remember this, when we're using the superlatives, we don't use the when there is a possessive. Okay, I'll give you some examples. Russia's best year is clearly 2010, when exports rose to well over 300,000. Once again, I'm using the approximations, well over. But the main key here is Russia's, Saxon genitive. Russia's best year is clearly 2010. Okay? Another example. Regarding cereals, wheat has its largest surge in popularity in the final quarter of 2018. Okay? Regarding cereals, wheat has its largest surge in popularity. Okay? So, when there is a possessive, we don't use the. Another example, China's most productive year was in 2010, when it almost reached 900,000. Okay, so master the superlative, jump online, do some online quizzes with the superlative. Very useful. Also comparatives as well, we need to include that. especially if we're grouping the information. I won't go into that now because I want to mention something that's equally as valuable, and that's the ability to transform labels. Okay, so here, if we have the graph in front of us and we've got the labels, maybe to the left or to the right, they're probably going to be single words or in ungrammatical note form. So it might say on the chart, and imagine we've got a pie chart, it might say, I don't know, percentage of UK population or portions of UK population, and it'll just say something like university educated 18%, blue collar worker 30%, white collar workers 20%, whatever. We need to transform these labels and fit them into grammatical sentences, okay? Grammatically coherent and correct sentences. So we would say, in this case, we'd say the percentage of university educated people, brackets 18%, was almost equal to the percentage of non-university educated people, brackets 21%, okay? So I'll give you another example. Maybe we're looking at the hair color, the differences of, or the percentage of different hair colors in Acme Corporation. Okay, once again, it could be something like the percentage of blonde workers, 18%, was almost equal to the percentage of brown-haired employees, 21%. Now, can you see here? Like we can use blonde workers, but we can't say brown workers, okay? That sounds a little bit, so I might be describing something else, okay? But we could say ginger workers if we wanted to explain, describe the amount of redheads. And I think the best way to get this skill is to look at past IELTS exam papers, and you can get those on scribd.com, as I mentioned before, and just have a look at them and practice transforming the label into a grammatical, transform it to fit a grammatical sentence. Let's have a look at another chart. So the label index, say something like drinking preferences in Eastern Europe 2015, filtered, unfiltered, purified, mineralized. Okay? So once again, maybe you want to try and do this at home or wherever you're listening to the recording. So I'll do it now. The percentage of Eastern Europeans who prefer unfiltered water, brackets 14%, was almost equal to the percentage of those who prefer filtered water. Okay? Brackets 16%. So here, once again, we just have to just modify it. Instead of just saying, we could not say the percentage of filtered, 14% was almost equal to the percentage of unfiltered. It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, practice that skill and learn it inside out. It's one of those skills that's quite quick to learn, I think, but it will help you a lot. Now, bonus tip here, 2 bonus tips actually. Was almost equal to, or is almost equal to. That's a very useful sentence to put in because it helps us find the similarities. Okay? If you can find any similarity, it's good because this way, by finding the similarities, by comparing them, by finding the maximums and the minimums, we're avoiding the listing, which I said before was abysmal. Okay? So using phrases like was almost equal to, is almost equal to, is very handy. Also, hopefully you picked up on a different structure I was using, which was like brackets 18% was almost equal to non-university educated people, brackets, 21%. Okay, that's another useful structure you can use. And as we said before, using different structures helps you with your grammatical range and accuracy. Now then, final point, and that is the ability to paraphrase. I've gone through this before, but I think last time I was mainly focusing on IELTS Academic Task 1. Here's a brief overview. Learn how to paraphrase because it's useful for both Academic Task 1 and Task 2. Sorry, the last time I did it, I was focusing on Task 2. So anyway, a good way to paraphrase, the quick way, is just change the order. Okay? Change the order of the words, and it just comes easier. So let's see. The pie chart shows the average daily consumption of 3 categories of food by nationality between 2000 and 2018. Here's mine. The pie chart compares the consumption of meat, vegetables and cereals by different nationalities over an 8-year period starting in 2000 and ending in 2018. Okay? So going, instead of nationality, I just said nationalities, just changing it. Actually described an 8-year period rather than saying between 2000 to 2018. So it's basically your ability to use synonyms and sort of like put the word in different forms. Okay. Also, you can see I dropped daily consumption. I just said the consumption. So also I just listed the 3 types. Just different things like that. Once again, this is something that you can easily practice, but I would recommend you get feedback. Otherwise, it can be a little bit frustrating if you don't know where your errors are. And if you do want feedback, have a look at IELTS Podcast, or just go to IELTS Podcast Essay Correction, search for that, and you'll find some services there focused on this specific focused on giving feedback. Sorry, it's the end of the podcast. We're almost done. Okay, so thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, remember you can send them to me at ben@IELTSPodcast.com. If you're in a hurry to prepare for the exam, then you might want to have a look at the online course. There we've got IELTS Academic Task 1 covered, IELTS Academic Task 2. You know, if you're one of those students whose mind goes blank when you start writing, or maybe you just don't know what to write, or you don't know what to include for Academic Task 1, then all of these problems are looked at in more detail on the course, and it might be more suitable for you as well if you've seen the video. It might be, if you've seen it visually, you might learn quicker as well. So also just another thing, when you are doing the course, you learn the information, you get an exercise, and then you send that exercise to us. At the moment, we have an ex-IELTS examiner correcting the essays, giving you feedback. So she'll give you feedback not only on your essay, she'll review the information that you've applied to your essay, she'll review the language, and she'll review the exam skills if you've incorporated them, and also give you tips to improve. So it's quite fast, it's quite effective, and it's a very good way to improve. Okay, it's a very fast way, very efficient way to improve as well. So all the best with the IELTS prep, and keep an eye out on Facebook as well, because there'll be some online classes coming up soon. Take care and good luck.
For listening to IELTSPodcast.com.